Amazon, the LA Lakers, Netflix, the New England Patriots, Apple. What do these organizations have in common? They win. And why do they win? They win because they have employees who trust senior leaders, feel an emotional connection to the brand, and will stop short at nothing to ensure the people who they serve, the customers and the fans, are delighted beyond belief. In short, these organizations win because their employees are engaged. When your employees are engaged, their productivity absolutely skyrockets and everyone benefits. Other employees, the leadership team, the board of directors, shareholders, Wall Street, the industry analysts, vendors, customers, clients, and the communities in which you live and work. Everyone benefits. And we also know that your organization, your company benefits because the companies around the globe that are in the top 10th percentile of employee engagement have stock returns 147% higher than the competition and are growing at a rate 90% faster than their competitors. And that is absolutely not a coincidence. There is a direct correlation between employee engagement and profitable revenue growth. There is a direct correlation between employee engagement and customer satisfaction. There's a direct correlation between employee engagement and productivity. There's a direct correlation between employee engagement and increased retention. The benefits are absolutely enormous. However, here's the major conundrum that most organizations face around the globe. They think that they can outsource culture change, outsource employee engagement to the human resources organization and realize these extraordinary results. And it simply doesn't happen that way. And here's why it doesn't work. Because even though in 95% of companies around the globe, human resources owns culture change, they own re-engaging employees, the truth of the matter is, HR doesn't have the biggest impact on the people, HR doesn't have the greatest impact on employee engagement. So they own it, but they don't have the greatest impact on it. Who has the greatest impact on employee engagement? Your frontline managers. And I know that many of you are sitting in the room, and I know there are also individual contributors in the room. But the truth of the matter is, the vast majority of companies around the globe are outsourcing culture change to HR and asking them to fix the culture, and they think that their organization is going to soar because of that, and they're leaving the most important thing off the table, which is getting their managers engaged in the employee engagement journey. And so what I can assure you is that you can succeed in this space, and you can create an amazing workplace culture if you team together to create a great workplace culture. But you will not create a great workplace culture if HR is the only player on your team. And the vast majority of organizations face and approach employee engagement that way. We're going to talk a little bit about the statistics and why that approach doesn't work, because it's one that has been used in corporate America for the past 50 years. And so today you're going to leave here understanding exactly what employee engagement is, what the benefits are to having an engaged workforce, why traditional approaches have failed for 4 decades, and a new and innovative approach that actually works. And so we're going to start by getting on the same page about what employee engagement is. So the most important takeaway from the video is the definition of employee engagement. When employees are engaged, it means they trust senior leaders and they feel an emotional connection to the organization. And because of that, they go above and beyond the call of duty and give a company a ton of discretionary effort. And that's why employee engagement matters. Because every single employee in your organization, each and every one of you, has a choice when you go to work each day. You can do what you have to do to get by, or you can give the organization every single thing you have and then some. And we know that when employees are disengaged, they actually show up at work each day and they just give the organization and their colleagues scraps. They do what they have to do to get by. And if you think about your individual role, you know exactly what that looks like. You know when you're going above and beyond the call of duty. You know when you're giving Samsung every single thing you have and then some. And you also know those days when you're in the workplace and you're just skating by. You're just doing what you have to do to get your job done, but you're not putting any passion or creativity or energy into your work. Okay, and so that's the difference between our engaged and our disengaged workers. And so the group of people who we're going to use today as an engaged team, Dorothy and her friends from The Wizard of Oz. And the reason why I'd like to use this classic movie is because the vast majority of people around the globe have seen this and they understand their personalities, they understand their plight, they understand what they went through. So is there anyone in the room who has not seen The Wizard of Oz? One person. You are the 8th person who I've met in the world, not in the world, out of 30,000 people who I've spoken to who has not seen The Wizard of Oz. But you're about to learn. So if you think about this group and what they went through, they were stalked by the Wicked Witch of the West. They were ambushed by winged monkeys. They were drugged in a poppy field, and Toto the dog was kidnapped. Does that ever sound like a day at Samsung? Ever, right? That's what our businesses are like. But even though they went through all of these horrible things, they remained engaged. They gave every single thing they had. Why? Because they trusted the leader giving them direction, Glinda the Good Witch, and they felt an emotional connection to their mission, which was to make it to Oz and get back to Kansas. Okay? They went above and beyond the call of duty. Their discretionary effort was second to none, and that's why they succeeded. And so if we think about all of the data that exists, reams and reams and reams of data tells us engaged workers provide a better customer experience. They're more productive. They're more creative. They stay longer. They're absent less. They steal less. They provide a better quality product or service. We also know that they're amazing ambassadors for the brand. They speak incredibly highly about the organization. They also say wonderful things about what it's like to work at the organization to their family and friends. So they actually recommend their organization as a best place or a great place to work. But even though we have all of this amazing data about the importance of having engaged workers, organizations around the globe are completely failing. How bad is it? It's dismal. 13% of global workers say that they are engaged. 30% in the United States. The lowest levels of employee disengagement around the globe, the Asia Pacific region, with 8% employee engagement. The industries with the highest levels of employee disengagement, IT, healthcare, retail, and hospitality. Hospitality is your hotels and your restaurants. Turnover among housekeepers, 93%. Turnover among nurses, 75%. And so we see enormous levels of employee disengagement in those industries, okay? So those are topping it out. What are our disengaged workers doing all day? We know that many times disengaged workers are the people who hang out in the break rooms, chatting, starting gossip and rumors. They're the people who walk around the halls and distract a lot of other coworkers from being productive because they talk, they're very chatty. We know that our disengaged workers are the people who regularly call out sick because the levels of absenteeism among your disengaged workers are much higher than your engaged employees. And if you're really lucky, your employees will spend the time that you're paying them to work to write a scathing review about your organization on the Glassdoor website, okay? And Indeed says that 83% of US workers actually go to the Glassdoor website first to see what current and previous employees are saying about what it's like to work at Samsung. So they're actually going there and getting feedback from the mouths of current employees, from the mouths of former employees, to make a decision as to whether or not they're going to accept an interview with your organization. And so it is so critical that you have an amazing Glassdoor review, but not because you've got a great marketing or PR machine behind you, because you have created an extraordinary workplace culture that nobody can imagine leaving. And it's really important for everybody to remember, all of these disengaged workers, they didn't start out that way. You didn't start out that way. Every single employee in the world goes to work on their first day of the job 100% engaged. They are willing to go above and beyond the call of duty. They want to hit the ball out of the park. They want to be the highest performing employee that organization has ever seen. We all have these ideas in our head about we are going to go in there and we are going to ace our job. We're going to show them. We're going to be high performer, right? We all start out that way. You all started out that way. But little by little, the dysfunctional workplace cultures that we have built in corporations chip away at people's spirits over time. And so people ask me, Jill, how can I tell if I'm disengaged? The easiest way for you to tell if you're disengaged, when you wake up in the morning and your first thought is, oh, I have to go to work, how does that land on you? If you don't want to get out of bed and go to work, you're disengaged. I don't mean every now and then, right? There are times where, oh, you may have gone out last night and had a couple glasses of wine, or it's the day after Super Bowl, or whatever, and you just don't want to go to work, right? But in general, if you don't want to come here every day, you are disengaged. But remember, you didn't start out that way. It's like I liken this to being in a bad relationship, right? You don't wake up one morning and say, I'm divorcing this person. It's like little things that they do, one after the other, after the other, after the other, over time. It might be weeks, it might be months, it might be years, and the next thing you know, you wake up and you're like, I don't want anything to do with this. I want to get divorced, right? That's what it's like when employees disengage. And so the Gallup organization, one of the leading research organizations around the globe, conducted the first State of the American Workforce Survey 40 years ago, 4 decades ago. And at that time, 30% of American workers said, I'm engaged at work, only 30%. So you may have looked at the video and thought, Jill, you're showing us 2013 data. It's out of date. That data is not out of date. The data from 2013 is the same data from 2003, is the same data from 1993, is the same data from 1983. So despite the fact that organizations have spent billions of dollars trying to create amazing workplace cultures that you don't want to leave, and despite the fact that 87% of C-suite executives say employee disengagement poses a real threat to my business's bottom line, absolutely no progress has been made. None in 40 years. And so the huge question on the table is why? And the answer is something that we talked about 10 minutes ago. It's because 95% of organizations around the globe, in every industry and in every country, cling to outdated methodologies to create an amazing workplace culture. And what is the most popular outdated methodology to fix a corporate culture? We're going to outsource this to human resources. They can fix it. They can fix anything. Right? And that's what organizations are doing. But as we discussed 10 minutes ago, even though HR owns culture change, even though they own creating that great workplace, they don't own the people who have the greatest impact on culture change. And that's your frontline managers. It's the people who supervise others. It's the people who have the most interaction with your employees on a day-to-day basis. And so what does it look like when nearly 2/3 of the American workforce show up at work every single day and they've checked out, right? They're sleepwalking through their day. They're putting in time and energy, but no creativity, no passion into their workday, right? They've checked out, they're disengaged. It shows up as decreased productivity, decreased customer satisfaction, decreased profitable revenue growth, increased absenteeism, increased retention issues, increased safety, increased quality issues. And again, the granddaddy of them all, and the thing that your senior leadership team cares about the most, it shows up as stagnant or decreased profitable revenue growth. Because we know that the organizations around the globe that have the highest levels of employee engagement are acing it as it relates to profitability, and they're acing it as it relates to global growth. So we've got all this information, right? We've got all this information that says we have a global epidemic on our hands. Things are an absolute mess out there. The way organizations are approaching it is simply not working. We've got all of that data from the Gallup organization as well. So if we're no longer going to rely on HR alone to fix the employee engagement crisis around the globe, what is a strategy that actually works? This. Your leadership team must be engaged in your employee engagement journey. Why? Because in order for employees to believe, I mean really believe, that an organization cares about creating an amazing workplace culture, the senior leaders must be involved. The senior leaders have to stand up and say, our culture is not where it needs to be, but we're going to fix this. If you have senior leaders in your organization who are not aligned and who just want HR to continue to own this, what's the best way to get senior leaders engaged in an employee engagement journey? Data. Executives absolutely love numbers. They eat them up. Why? Because you don't get to be in the corner office without knowing a thing or two about the numbers. As a senior leader, you are rated on a daily basis on your ability to meet or exceed the numbers. You have customers looking at the numbers. You have shareholders looking at the numbers. You have industry analysts looking at the numbers. You have Wall Street looking at the numbers. You have employees as shareholders and stockholders. You might even have restricted stock units, right? Looking at the numbers. And so you've got CEOs, you have senior level people, people in the C-suite, they are fixated on numbers. And so when you show senior leaders the correlation between employee engagement and profitable revenue growth, employee engagement and customer satisfaction, employee engagement and increased retention, that's what causes senior leaders to stand up and take notice. But I have to be honest with you, it's much easier to get a senior leader to stand up and take notice when something's wrong in the organization, when you're at an inflection point, when you're not meeting the numbers, when the numbers are in the red. Nowadays, I have lots of organizations that come to me, not because their numbers are in the red, because our economy happens to be incredibly strong, but because they are having major issues retaining people. The average millennial stays in their job for 18 months. And when the Gallup organization asks millennials, why are you company hopping? 83% of them say, loved my job, didn't like the environment, the culture in which I was being asked to do my job. And I have to tell you, that's what I absolutely love about millennials. They get a bad rap, but millennials are completely open and honest. They tell you exactly what they think. And do you know what they say to employers? If you don't create an amazing workplace where I can be the best version of myself each and every day, and where I can add meaning and add value and make a difference and be a part of something bigger and be connected to something bigger than myself, I'm going to quit on you. And do you want to know what? Then they're quitting on them. And then organizations don't understand why they're leaving. But millennials and Gen Zs, those are the people coming up behind the millennials, and they're like millennials on steroids. I'm serious. They're 23 years old right now, your Gen Zers, okay? Next year, 50% of your workforce will be millennials and Gen Zs. Yet we still have lots of senior leaders saying, no, we're just going to keep it the way it is, everything's fine. Do you want to know why? Because they're looking at the profitable revenue growth. They're not looking at all of the other statistics, right? Like retention, like employee satisfaction. They don't look at these things. But it's so critical that you have a leadership team who gets it and who cares about this stuff. And we know that yours does. We know that your leaders are wanting to create that amazing workplace culture that you cannot imagine leaving, that enables you to cherry pick best and brightest talent from your competitors, that enables you to attract and retain amazing workers out in the industry, right? and that enables you to stay here and flourish in your careers. Second, once you know that your leadership team is involved and is willing to help champion creating an amazing culture, there are 4 focus areas that we know of that drive trust in senior leaders and the emotional connection to the organization. And that's the definition of employee engagement. And so I always say to organizations, if you don't know where to begin on your employee engagement journey, focus in these 4 areas, because we know that they're areas that employees care about, and we know that they are levers. These are areas that drive engagement, and they also drive disengagement if you don't pay attention to them. And when I say you need to focus in these 4 areas, I don't mean HR. I mean your managers need to focus in these 4 areas. And that doesn't mean that if you're an individual contributor, you don't have a role in all of this, because you do. But we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Right now, we're talking about the strategy. So if you're going to approach employee engagement, this is the most strategic way to do that. So it's really important that you note that I call this a strategy and not a program or an initiative. If you approach employee engagement and culture change as a program, everybody's going to think that it's just the program du jour. Here today, gone tomorrow. In order for people to really believe that your senior leaders are serious about this, and that an organization understands the criticality of creating a great workplace culture, it's about approaching this strategically. It's about approaching this in a way that you've never approached it in the past. It's about fundamentally shifting how you do things here in this space. Because my guess is, historically, and in most organizations, leaders are not engaged in the employee engagement journey. It's owned by human resources. And managers are not engaged in the employee engagement journey. Again, it's all HR people trying to rally the troops, trying to get people re-engaged. And it's a model that simply doesn't work. So where did this strategy come from? When I worked at Avaya, I led the Global Internal Communications Organization, and our culture absolutely sucked. I think we had 22% employee engagement. Going to work every day was a horrible endeavor. You could tell that the vast majority of people were disengaged. It was just a sad place to be. So as the leader of internal communications, I was privy to our employee engagement survey scores. I could read all of the verbatim feedback. That's that open-ended box where people could write anything anonymously to the senior leadership team. And it was absolutely appalling, the things that I was seeing from employees. And I knew that something had to be done about it. And so I went out and I gathered a lot of research. And I looked at the 15 organizations that have the highest levels of employee engagement. And in every single one of those companies, their leadership team was championing their employee engagement journey. It wasn't being led by HR. HR was absolutely engaged in the strategy, but they were not leading it. They were not the mouthpiece. The leaders were the mouthpiece. And then I looked at all of the areas where these organizations were focusing. And to be honest with you, they were focusing on 8 to 10 different areas. But I'm a 3 to 5 girl. I believe that in life and in business, if you want to succeed, you should not bite off 10 goals. You should not bite off 10 different, let's say, development areas for yourself. You shouldn't have 10 New Year's resolutions, right? What are the 3 to 4 most important areas where if we focus our efforts, we can drive massive levels of trust in senior leadership and the emotional connection to the organization? And so I gathered all of that data and I married what I happened to know about employees, because as the head of global internal communications, you might not know this, but if people don't complain or go to HR for solutions, they come to internal communications. So you really tend to have your finger on the pulse of the employee body and what they think, what they like, what they dislike. And so I married all of that information that I had about our employees with all of the data that I had gathered, and I came up with this strategy. We executed it at Avaya. And when I say we, it was my internal communications team, which had about 18 people on it at the time. We partnered with human resources, we partnered with our frontline managers, and we partnered with the C-suite, the 13 people who are leading our company. And in 1 year, we increased employee engagement 12 points According to Gallup, 2 points is statistically valid, and our stock rose 26% last year. So this strategy works. And if you're wondering, who are the benchmarks today? What are the organizations that are scoring, like they're hitting the ball out of the park? 80, 85, 90, 95% employee engagement. Just to give you some idea as to how good that is, as an organization, if you have 65% employee engagement, you're considered best in class. That's how low the bar is set. If you scored 65% on a test, you'd be a borderline failure. But in the world of employee disengagement, it makes you a rock star. Okay, so if you have 2/3 of your people are engaged, you're a rock star. You're in the top 10 percentile of all companies around the globe as it relates to employee engagement. So keep that number in mind. Now we're going to talk about organizations that are 85, 90, 95% employee engagement. Off the charts. Zappos, Netflix, Nordstrom. Think about shopping at Nordstrom, right? What that experience is like. Ritz-Carlton, Facebook, and ChickfilA. Has anyone ever eaten at a ChickfilA? So I had not eaten at a ChickfilA until a year and 2 months ago, and I had heard amazing things about their chicken sandwich. So I was working from home in Denver, Colorado, again, February of 2017, and I thought, I should probably be healthy, eat some protein. Let me get out of my home office and drive to ChickfilA. So I drove to the ChickfilA on Quebec Street in Denver, and I get up to the ChickfilA, and there must have been 30 cars in that drive-through line, and I am not exaggerating. And they actually had 2 lines. The cars went out into the parking lot around, and they were like blocking this major street, and I was amazed. And my first inclination was to leave, because I grew up in New York City and I don't have a lot of patience, but I'm getting older and I'm understanding patience is a virtue, and so I'm like, Jill, sit in the line and like just suck it up. You've got your smartphone, it'll be okay. So I'm sitting in the line, playing on my smartphone, and I look up, and a bunch of cars had already moved forward, like in 30 seconds, but I didn't know that because we are not allowed to honk your horn in Denver, okay? So nobody honks their horn in Colorado. So I didn't know that I was supposed to pull my car up. And so the next thing I know, like before I knew it, I'm at the board where I can order the food. And I'm looking at the board, and somebody comes on the monitor and says, I hope you're having a pleasant day. May I take your order? And I said, yeah. I said, I've never been to a Chick-fil-A. This is very exciting for me. I said, it appears to me that your #1 chicken sandwich only comes with a pickle on it. Is that true? And she said, yes, just a pickle. I said, no lettuce, no mayonnaise, no tomato? She said, just a pickle. And I said, well, I think that's very odd. I said, and I don't like pickles. So I want that chicken sandwich plain with a packet of mayonnaise on the side, please, to go. She said, thank you, pull forward and we'll take your money outside. I had no idea what she was talking about. Next thing I know, I'm driving my car forward, and there's a boy standing at my window with a handheld device. And he says, cash or credit? And I said, what are you doing? What are you doing? And he said, I'm taking your money to expedite you through the line. And I said, oh, this is really good, right? Really good. Swipes my card. Hope you have a pleasant day. Pull forward and your food will be waiting. I pull around the corner, and before I knew it, 3 minutes maybe, I was in that drive-through line, and I'm at the window, and I was impressed. I was thinking to myself, this place, the hums along, they know how to operate. So I get to the window opens up, and I'm staring into the eyes of a 16-year-old girl. She was young. You knew this was her first job. She's making minimum wage. She's working a drive-through window, right? Not glamorous. And she has the biggest smile on her face. And she says, welcome to Chick-fil-A. Your food will be out in a moment. And I looked at her and I said, I have to tell you something. I said, I'm not proud of this, but I've been through a lot of drive-through windows in my lifetime. A lot. I said, and I have never, ever had an experience like this. I said, I was going to drive away. I said, and I didn't because I saw so many cars. I said, but the line moved quickly. I said, you didn't upsell me. You didn't say, do you want fries with that? Do you want to supersize it? Do you want a drink? I said, you just took my order. I said, the boy took my money so that I could move through the line faster. I said, this line like moved really quickly. I said, now here you are, really pleasant. I said, this has been an amazing experience. I said, so if that chicken sandwich is anything like this customer experience, I go, I just want you to know you're going to see me a lot more. And she looked at me. You guys, she's 16. She's a teenager with the biggest smile on her face, making minimum wage, working at a drive-thru. And she smiled at me and said, it's our culture. And I was like, what? I'm like, are you kidding me? Do you know what I do for a living? I'm like, I live for experiences like this. I talk to adults every single week, and they tell me, Jill, we can't change our culture. Jill, that's really difficult. Well, Chick-fil-A has their teenagers doing it, right? And if you can get teenagers to create a great culture, and if you can get teenagers to understand, if you put your people first, your people can put your customers first. And Chick-fil-A gets that in spades. They get it in spades, and they've got one amazing culture, and that culture is replicated in every single Chick-fil-A in America. Do you know how I can say that? Because I've been to Chick-fil-A 30 times since last February, and I've been to Chick-fil-A in Texas and Michigan and Atlanta and New York City and California, and the experience is the same in every single Chick-fil-A. They've got their culture down, and they've got their teenagers bought into it. It's fabulous. And that's what I want for you. That's what I want for you. I want you to create the most amazing workplace culture in every single one of your teams, in every single one of your divisions, in your entire organization, so that whoever touches you has the same experience. They know what to expect, because all of you are living your values. You're walking your values. You're role models for your values, because your values are the tenets of who you are. They're what Samsung believes in. They're who you need to be. They're what a person should experience when they touch any element of your organization. And you guys can do this. It's not difficult. And we're going to talk about those 4 areas in 1 minute. But first, let's talk about what happens when you have a crappy, dysfunctional workplace culture. That thing in the bubble is a flying monkey. The man in the back doesn't know about this, and that's probably really good. Because how many of you were terrorized when you were a child and those flying monkeys were screeching and came descending out of that turret in the top of the castle, and they scooped up Toto and they took him into the woods? Right? Horrified. Horrified. How many of you have worked for a flying monkey? I didn't say here. I said, how many of you have worked for a flying monkey? You can raise your hands, because it's not about here. We all have worked for a flying monkey, a bad manager, a bad leader. My friends, this is not a stretch. When you have a crappy workplace culture, who here has worked in a really bad workplace? Right? It's horrible. It's horrible. Employees feel like a black cloud hangs over their head each and every day. They feel like they're under attack, and they respond by disengaging. But it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. If your leaders are engaged, if your managers are engaged, you are halfway to cracking the code to employee disengagement. So the first half is ensuring that your managers and your leaders get this and are willing to partner with human resources to create that amazing workplace that every single one of you wants to be in, that enables you to be the best version of you every day, and that you want to brag about from the rooftops. That's step 1. Step 2, the 4 areas that we know drive massive levels of trust in senior leadership and the emotional connection to the organization, which is the definition of employee engagement. This model is in depth in my book, so are going to read what I talk about mirrors my book, so you can read even more about it. But you might be sitting there thinking, Jill, there is no way that there is one model to re-engage all employees in every industry, in every country, in every generation, because people are different. what I've learned in my lifetime, people are not different. Every employee is a human being, and human beings are wired similarly. What engages and inspires me engages and inspires you. And what disengages and deflates me disengages and deflates you. At the end of the day, in order to re-engage a workforce, you simply need to meet their basic human needs. It's that simple. The definition of culture is how we do things here. So in order to change your culture, you simply need to do things here differently tomorrow than you're doing here today. It's that simple. It's that straightforward. It's that direct. Every person around the globe wants to work for a leadership team and a manager who has the confidence and courage to hire the right people and to fire the people who are sinking the ship. Every single person around the globe wants to work in an organization where they can see that they have meaning, they're adding value, they're making a difference, where they're connected to something bigger than themselves. Every person around the globe wants to know that they have a voice, that their voice matters, that they can speak up at work, and that their voice is being heard. And every single person around the world wants to be acknowledged and appreciated for a job well done. This may seem incredibly foundational, and it is. But 90% of organizations around the world are not doing these things, which is why we have such massive levels of employee disengagement. So I liken this to building a house. If you were going to build the most amazing business culture in the world, where would you start? You need to pour the foundation. This is your foundation. These are the basics. These are the things that human beings crave. They crave them, and they're so easy to do. But it's about all of your managers, all of your supervisors marching in the same direction. It's about all of your leaders focusing in these 4 areas. Because if you only have a few people focusing in these areas, you're only going to get a little bit of re-engagement, right? If you have everybody focus in these areas, that's how you create a movement. That's how you shift a culture. And so let's dive a little bit into each of these areas so you understand what they are. Getting the right person in every chair. It's who an organization hires and who they fire. And I'll get to that in a moment. You need to be hiring people whose values, individual values, are aligned with Samsung's values. Why? Because when a person's individual values are aligned with the organization's values, the individual instantly sees themselves in the organization and they feel a deep emotional connection. We're not trying to kid or fool anybody. It's incredibly subconscious. People don't even realize it's happening. But if what you believe in is what Samsung believes in, you're going to feel that emotional connection and you're going to be more engaged. Who you fire. I want to preface this with I'm a huge believer in personal development and growth. I believe every person in the world has the ability to learn and grow and improve, to be a better person, to be a better worker. I believe that. However, if you have people amongst you who have toxic negative attitudes, who are incompetent at their job, so everybody around them has to pick up the slack, or who are leaders of people and they are a horrendous, crappy leader, those people need to be developed or they need to be removed from your organization. And here's why. Because if you leave people in your organization who fit into one of those 3 categories, or let's say you move one of those people from this business unit or division to that business unit or division, you are just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. When you have a person in your organization who has a toxic attitude, is incompetent, or is a really bad leader, everybody around that employee knows it. We all know who these people are. And do you know what you guys think? Why isn't senior leadership doing anything about this? And in that moment, you're chipping away at the trust that engaged employees have in the senior leadership team. You're actually driving employee disengagement by not dealing with people and ensuring that every person earns their chair. Okay? Now, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to go to work today and be sucky. Nobody says that, right? Everybody's doing their best, but sometimes a person's best isn't good enough. And so as a leader, as a manager, it's so important to identify anyone who needs to grow and put them on a plan and partner with them to help them grow, help them become the employee that Samsung needs them to be in order for you guys to all meet your goals, right? That's what you need to be doing as a manager. And as an employee, again, it's about living the values. It's about, if you are put on a performance improvement plan, doing every single thing that you can to grow and learn and develop. It's about helping your coworkers who are struggling when you know that they're working towards staying here and being the best version of themselves, right? So employee engagement isn't just about what the leaders and managers have to do. Every single person here makes up your culture. You all get to decide together how we do things here. And so it's about you being supportive in this place, or even if you know you fit into one of those categories, partnering with your manager to turn that around. Second bucket, goal alignment. When Gallup asks the US population, workforce, why do you go to work each day? 80% say, I want to add meaning, add value, make a difference, and be a part of something bigger than myself. 20% say, I'm working for a paycheck. Okay, so those are the numbers. Your millennials will tell you in spades. I think the number for millennials is 87% say, I want to change the world, right? So as an employer, you have to make sure that you create an environment that enables a person to see that what they do has meaning, is adding value and making a difference. The easiest way to do this, when you're writing your individual objectives, they should all be written off of your CEO or president's objectives. When your objectives are written based off of your CEO's or president's versus your job description, you can see that what I'm doing every single day is aligned with the mission. It's aligned with the vision. It's aligned with where Samsung is going. I am helping to contribute. I am actively doing things each and every day that are working toward our organization's future, our organization's success. Then a person can see a line of sight between where they sit and where the organization is going, and that causes people to engage. Another thing, gone should be the days of annual performance reviews. Millennials got feedback every day of their lives. Every day of their lives. And now they come into work and they're like, you're gonna tell me how I'm doing once a year? Really? Really? Once a day isn't enough, right? And this isn't a dig against anybody. It's fabulous. It's communicating. People want to know where they stand. They want to know how they're doing. Formal performance management conversations have got to be held quarterly, monthly, right? Talk to your people. Ask them what they want. Structure it based on what your employees' needs are. If you're an employee and you don't like how often your manager is talking to you in a formal conversation, let them know. I'd like to do this monthly. I'd like to do this quarterly. It doesn't have to come from the manager. It could come from either side. Another thing, ad hoc performance feedback. Nobody should be waiting until a formal review, until a meeting, to let somebody know that they're doing something well or something poorly. If there's something that your manager's doing and you don't really like the way they're managing you, have an open and honest conversation. If you're leading people and you see them do something well or poorly, have an open and honest conversation in the moment. Because when you talk to somebody in the moment when they're doing something well or poorly, they're going to either stop it or do more of it. Because they can connect, oh, I just did that and I just got this feedback. It connects with people, okay? So it's so critical. A great example of this. In the early 60s, JFK went to the NASA space station in Cocoa Beach, Florida. And he was just walking through the halls. He came across a janitor. And he asked the janitor, what do you do here? And the janitor replied, I help put men on the moon. He didn't say I clean toilets. He said I help put men on the moon. And that's because the NASA leadership team gets it. They understand that a person needs to see that what they do every single day is contributing, making a difference, adding value, that they're more than just a number, right? His goals, the janitor's goals, were connected to the goals of the NASA space mission shuttle, right? Huge stuff. Their leadership team gets it. Two-way communication culture, so critical that your managers, that your leaders are picking the brains of every single person who works here. You guys have great ideas. There's no doubt in my mind, because you're closest to the customer. You know what's broken, you know what needs to get fixed, you know what's going great and you should be doing more of, you know the stuff they've swept under the corner of the rug 30 years ago that they're unwilling to pull out and work on. You guys know it all. You're in the trenches. You know it all. So speak about it. Engage in the forums, engage in focus groups. Ask your manager if you can lead a staff meeting, right? Speak up, share what you know, share your ideas. That's what your senior leaders are looking for. They're not looking for people to follow orders. You are all in your chairs because you can add value, but you can't add value if you don't communicate. But I have to say, it's also your organization's responsibility to create opportunities for you to speak, because I know it's not human nature for people to speak up. And so it's about you just not letting communications from Samsung land on you. It's about you creating communications, you saying, let's do a focus group and fix this broken process. It's about you engaging in those opportunities to have a voice and ensure your voice is heard. Fourth, recognition. Companies spend billions of dollars a year on logo branded tube socks. You guys, a pair of socks is not going to stop someone from quitting on you. Do people love free swag? Absolutely. I love free stuff, right? But a water bottle with the company name on it is not going to stop people from quitting on you. It's not. When you have a crappy, dysfunctional workplace culture, Gallup asked the American workforce, how do you want to be recognized? 78% say, I want to hear the words, thank you. Thank you. It's free. And you can all do it. This isn't just about your managers or your leaders recognizing you. This is about all of you creating a culture of rampant recognition. It's about you using the thank you cards that are out there, giving them to one another in spades. It's about you hanging them on walls, hanging them in your cubes, hanging them in office space. It's about you constantly looking around for people and events that you can celebrate. And again, this is not a leadership thing. It's not a supervisor thing. All of you can help contribute to this amazing workplace culture that your leaders want, because I know you want it too. And so again, it's so critical for you to remember, as a leader, are there things that I can be doing in these 4 areas? Absolutely. But there are also things you can be doing in these 4 areas as an employee, because culture is how we do things here. And so how all of you are doing things here defines what we are, what we believe in, and whether or not you're going to succeed. Again, because the correlation between employee engagement and customer satisfaction and productivity and profitable revenue growth, it's real and it's undeniable. So where do you go from here? Again, managers, execute on some of the things we've talked about. Employees, participate. You own your engagement just as much as the leadership team owns engaging you, and just as much as your manager owns being a great leader on your behalf. Okay, so again, participate, be involved, be engaged. Understand that this can be grassroots. You can all rise up and say, we want to be the best version of Samsung that we can be, and it's up to me to be a part of this and to do some of the things that Jill talked about. Resources. Everybody has a copy of my book. If not you, who? Also, I have a PDF called the Top 10 Tips to Re-Engage Employees. If anything I said with you today resonates, if you text my name, Jill, to 42828, you will get a copy of that PDF. Also, employee engagement is my lane. I absolutely love it. I'm constantly doing research in this space, looking at organizations that are extraordinary, gathering ideas from the best and brightest cultures, and packaging all of those and shipping them out to the people who follow me. So that will also get you on my weekly blog, and so you can be on the cutting edge of the latest research, what's coming out of Gallup, what's coming out of the best and brightest organizations, because I feel like it's my responsibility to know that and gather it and package it up for you so that you can focus on being the best leader or employee that you can be. So what are your key takeaways? Put people first, believe it doesn't have to be difficult, and partner with other people to own it. As the title of my book reads, If not you, who? You chose to be a part of this organization. Every single one of you is a leader. I don't care if you're an individual contributor or a manager or on the senior leadership team. You are a part of this organization. You are a leader, regardless of where you sit. And that means you're a dealer in hope. And with that choice comes an enormous responsibility to ensure that Samsung succeeds. The quickest path to that end game is to ensure that every single one of you are engaged, because we know that engaged workers give you blood, sweat, and tears, and disengaged workers give you scraps. It's the truth. And for that reason, your disengaged workers offer you the greatest untapped potential for you to improve productivity, profitability, and performance, period. And finally, I want to thank you for being with me today. I understand that it was your choice to come into this room and learn more about employee engagement, to learn more about culture change, and for that, I applaud you. The fact that you're here tells me that you care, and it tells me that you get it. You have everything inside of you that you need to succeed. Everything. You have the power. You always did. You just have to go back and unleash it. Thank you.